Let's take a look at Obstagoon. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sableyes. I'm Mitch and today we're going to be taking a look at Straight Obstagoon. It's a deck that Marco played recently in our Winterbox tournament at Good Games in Adelaide, and one that obviously does have some potential going forward. Very similar in concept to Obstagoon Sableye, but obviously relying more on the Obstagoon as a main attacker in order to disrupt some of the big threats in the current format. Most of those decks are obviously basic Pokemon, so if we can pull off Obstagoon's attack, we should be good to go. We'll take a very quick look at the list on PTCGO. So here we have it. This is the list that Marco played with over the weekend. And there might have been a couple of little edits along the way, but for the most part it is the same. And it's centered around Galarian Obstagoon with Untamed Shout. When you play this Pokemon from your hand, you can place 3 damage counters, but more importantly, it has the attack Obstruct for a dark and a colorless. 90 damage during your opponent's next turn. They cannot do any damage to you if they are a basic Pokemon. So our plan here is to get out an Obstagoon as quickly as we possibly can, and hopefully our opponent can't take 6 prizes before we completely lock them out of the game. We're running a 4-2-4 line so that we can make it as easy as possible to get Obstagoons out, but we're also running 4 Jirachi in order to speed up the process at the beginning of the game. The early turns for this deck are obviously the most difficult, so we want to make sure that we've got Jirachi with Stellar Wish as an option to open up with. We also have a couple of other Pokemon floating around. Mew is obviously very strong for bench barrier. We can also use Psi Power to set up knockouts for Yveltal GX, which we're going to use the Doom Count GX attack if we have to. Obviously not necessary in every single game, but definitely a good option just in case your opponent has 1 out to Obstagoon. We can take a knockout and end the game from there. We also have a copy of Mimikyu with Shadow Box. This card obviously very strong, especially since Mewtwo is in the format. We can play this down, potentially do a little bit of snipe damage with a Zigzagoon or an Obstagoon, and then stop our opponent's Mewtwo and Mew from attacking. So these are pretty strong Pokemon to support our 4-2-4 Obstagoon line. When it comes to supporters, we've got a kind of weird one. We've obviously got 4 copies of Professor's Research. Professor Magnolia is an incredibly strong card. We want to use it as frequently as possible in the early game in order to draw as many as possible, get ourselves into those Obstagoons as soon as we can. We also have 3 copies of Rosa. Rosa is an excellent card in this deck because it asks for so little. All that we want is a Pokemon, a item, and an energy most of the time. Obstagoon, Rare Candy, and a Dark Energy gets us an attack with pretty much every Zigzagoon that we've got on the field of play, and if our opponent does take a knockout, we can use it to reconsolidate our field. We also have 2 copies of Cynthia. Obviously, we do want that little bit of extra support, that a little bit of extra draw in the early game, but we don't want to discard as many cards, so keeping those rare candies in mind, Cynthia is a 2 count. We also have 1 copy of Marnie. Can be a frustrating card to deal with, especially for decks that rely on having a large hand size like Blacephalon, so if we're able to remove that hand size before they can take knockouts, the better for us. The rest of the item line is relatively straightforward. We max out to 4 copies of Switch. We're worried about things like Alolan, sorry, not Alolan, is it Alolan Raichu and Raichu? I think it is. Or Raichu, right? We're afraid of that. Pardon me. Ooh. We're afraid of that. We don't want it to take any attacks on our Obstagoon because it can paralyze us. We want to be able to switch out. Also, potential sleep from Inkos and stuff like that can be annoying. We obviously play 4 Rare Candy. We're running a Stage 2 deck, so we need to run 4 Rare Candy to make sure we can get them out consistently. We also have 3 copies of Evo Incense and 2 copies of Pokemon Communication to go along with 4 copies of Quick Ball. We've got a very thick Pokemon line in this list. We want to make sure, like I said, that we can get that Obstagoon out as soon as we possibly can, and if we do have to discard them for whatever reason, we can always get them back with 1 copy of Ordinary Rod. You can have a regular version if you'd like. I just happen to pull a gold one, so here we are. We've got a couple of other things floating around to support us. Obviously, Chaotic Swell is a good stadium to stop your opponent from doing the things that they want to do. Pikarom now needs exactly 3 energy to attack instead of being able to put down Thunder Mountain, as well as things like Mewtwo and Mew being able to play down stadiums like Viridian Forest to help them search out energy. We have 1 copy of Counter Gain. This is going to help us get an attack off if we do fall behind in our attachments. It can happen, so we need to be careful that we've got 1 Obstagoon ready to go just in case. Counter Gain helps us do that. We obviously have 2 Escape Board. We're running a Jirachi engine, so we need to run this. And we have 1 copy of Stealthy Hood, which we can attach to our active Obstagoon to stop things like Fion affecting us. Means that we're going to be able to at least stop our opponent from gusting without using their items. To round out the list, we have 9 copies of Dark Energy. 9's probably enough that you're going to see at most hands, which is really good. You need an attachment every turn, but it's not so many that will get locked into a hand that's unplayable. Overall, I think this deck is really good fun. There are a lot of consistency problems, and some of its matchups are a little bit sketchy, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's the right play for OCIC. I mean, sure, if you get a good run and you get a bit of good luck, then sometimes decks can't answer this card, but overall, it's a pretty strong one, as we'll see in some gameplay coming up right now. Here we go, our first game with Obstagoon. These games are pre-recorded, so I know what is going to happen in them, but I think they're good examples of how the decks work. We're going to be playing against Baby Blacephalon here, which is probably one of the deck's better matchups. We'll flip the coin here and go first, which is probably not a bad idea. We've got Galarian, Zigzagoon, and Mimikyu to start off with. Now, at the point of playing, I obviously don't know what is happening, but I do have a relatively good hand here. I've got a Professor's Research for turn 2. I've got a Quick Ball to guarantee that I've got a Zigzagoon on the bench, so even if my opponent does get a good hand, we're ready to go. And I now know, obviously, Baby Blacephalon. Okay, the key here, we want to make sure that we just get an Obstagoon out. There's not a huge amount more that our opponent can do. I'll put a damage counter onto the Blacephalon, that's fine. Consider attaching to the active. It's probably better to attach to the benched one here just in case. So I'll do that and then pass the turn. Obviously, I want to give myself the best opportunity to get into an Obstagoon as soon as I possibly can, because if I'm able to do it now, it's going to make it a lot easier for me to get going in the mid to late game. Blacephalon also has a bit of an awkward HP in that 120 is 90 plus 30 from the Obstagoon, so if I am able to get a couple of ticks onto this Blacephalon, I'll be feeling pretty good. I'll just be able to knock it out, which is going to be fine by me. My opponent has got Fiery Flint here. They've managed to attach an energy, which is always good, but it's not an ideal start for them. Obviously, they're going to want to try and take a knockout if they can, but since they had to welder early, no chance there. Could potentially have put 60 damage onto that Zigzagoon if the Blazer had have gone off, but unfortunately didn't happen here. So I'm going to grab the Stealthy Hood just in case there is that pesky Fion running around, and I'll also try my best to get a Obstagoon here, but didn't end up happening, so we'll just rack him back up again. I'm thinking I might get rid of this Pokemon communication and grab a Jirachi and attach to the active and just retreat. I'm not super worried about what's going to happen here. Stellar Wish, I'll grab myself a rare candy. I hopefully will find this Jirachi getting knocked out this turn, so I can attach, spread this energy here. I've got a rare candy and a Rosa in hand, so whatever happens, if my opponent does get a knockout, I've got myself my Obstagoon ready to go. It is a bit frustrating. It means that Blacephalon's going to be able to pull ahead in the prize race a little bit. And here comes Custom Catcher, so looks like they've got double customs already. They're going to knock out a Zigzagoon, which is frustrating, and they're going to get rid of that Stealthy Hood, which is also a little bit annoying. But that's the risk. Sometimes you just have to play it down. Fireball Circus here for 100, discarding 2 energy means that Zigzagoon is gone, but they still took a knockout, so Rosa into Rare Candy is going to give me exactly what I need. I also have Switch, so I can put the Jirachi in the active as well. Rosa here is going to find me an Obstagoon. I'm just double checking here. Okay, what do I need? I definitely need Obstagoon. I might grab myself like, I don't know, I could grab myself an Escape Board. I could even grab myself another Zigzagoon and an Evo Incense, which could give me a good option going forward. Means that I can put some damage onto a benched Blacephalon and be ready to get another Obstagoon if I need one. The most important thing is I've got the energy and I've got the Obstagoon going this turn, so that's a positive. Evo Incense will grab the Obstagoon, we'll evolve that with the rare candy, and I'll probably place the damage onto the active. It's not optimal. If I could, I'd probably prefer to just put 2 ticks from the Zigzagoon onto that particular Blacephalon, but the likelihood of that happening is pretty slim. I still have a Stellar Wish, but you know, it's probably not going to happen. So I managed to get into the escape board here, which is pretty good. Means I can save the switch for later. I know that I am going to need to deal with something like Blacephalon GX, but the Obstruct, more importantly, is going to get the knockout. Now my opponent needs to find a way to gust around me again. They've already used their custom catches once. They need to find a way to power up their attacker and to discard 3 energy, so it's going to be pretty tough. There's not a very high chance of them getting a knockout here. They just got the Lucky Egg onto the active. They also play down a Blacephalon and a Fire Crystal here to get their energy back. One thing about Lucky Egg is that it only triggers off damage from an attack, so if I play this one right, I might actually be able to sneak myself a free knockout here. I've got a Lanoon, so I will attach, and then no need to do anything else. I will simply attack for 100 damage, or 90 damage, 100 in total. The reason I did that, I don't need to do anything else here. I can just set up the lock and end the game, and that's what's happened. Now, that first game with Blacephalon obviously ended very, very early. My opponent identifying the fact that he's very unlikely to win in that situation. We're going up now against Zacian ADP, which can potentially also be a good matchup, but I know for a fact that my opponent is running a copy of Galarian Berserker, so this could be an interesting one. The hand here is not super strong. I mean, it's not bad. I've got myself a Jirachi and a Quick Ball, so I can grab Zigzagoon, and I'll play that one down. At this stage of the game, I don't know what I'm playing against. Seeing a Jirachi in the active could mean pretty much anything. But that Jirachi here does hit Evo Incense, which is really, really good for me. That means I am definitely going to be able to get myself a Obstagoon next turn. Whether or not I have an energy is another question, but if my opponent does manage to take a knockout, then Rosa is available to me. Worst case scenario, I just Stellar Wish again, hopefully get myself into what I need, and we can move on from there. So my opponent grabbing the Zacian here, and this is when I'm starting to feel quite confident. Zacian ADP, in my experience, is the one of the 3 decks floating around at the moment at the top of the field that I'm probably feeling most comfortable against, especially with Obstagoon. But when they flip heads on Custom Catcher, that is not super great. I also shuffle away my hand with Marnie as well, so it's a little bit frustrating. That perfect start is gone, but I will have at least an opportunity to draw some new cards here. I've got a Cynthia and a Research, which is important. I also have a Counter Gain, but I don't think that's super critical right now, although I am starting to worry that this Zacian might actually be able to take a knockout here. Intrepid Sword is going to get him a few extra cards and wear away. Now, I picked up the Stealthy Hood there, which is really strong, especially against Zacian ADP. We want to make sure that we can get into that Stealthy Hood as soon as possible, because these guys are the most likely to be playing that Theone card, which can be so frustrating. Again, missed everything that I needed to get myself an Obstagoon this turn, but it's fine. I can attach to the active, I can Quick Ball, get rid of the money, and start setting myself up another Zigzagoon, and then just retreat into Jirachi. I don't really care whether I get an attack off with Obstagoon this turn. It's not important. I just need to make sure that I save my resources. So I'll retreat into Jirachi, I'll Stellar Wish again, and hopefully I can find what I need. I think a skateboard probably isn't that bad there. It's a bit annoying that the rare candy is in hand without the Pokemon, but you know, it could be worse. We won't attach the escape board because this Jirachi might get knocked out. If it does, then we've got Rosa, so we're good to go anyway. Alright, so my opponent is pretty much set here. He's got Metal Patch in hand, I know, or Metal Saucer is now what is its official name, which I really don't like. Quick Ball here. We'll either find him another Zacian, you'd think, or maybe even an ADP. Goes for the Oranguru for the Primate Wisdom. Understands that drawing cards is going to be important in this particular matchup. That Oranguru is very, very strong. Means that Magnolia can be incredibly powerful. We've got a Galarian Meowth coming onto the field, and this is where I'm starting to think, okay, maybe I'm going to need to have a think about this, because as good as Obstagoon is, it really struggles against anything that's a stage 1. Now, I know that Galarian Berserker has 120 HP, I believe. So I've got a chance as long as I can snipe some damage onto it. I've got Obstagoons to go. I'm still feeling relatively confident I should be able to get there, but we will wait and see. Zacian, again, going for the Intrepid Sword, and back to my turn now. I've been given plenty of time to set myself up, so feeling pretty strong. I've got the escape board, I've got the research. Now this is a decision that's really important here. Do I go for the Jirachi Stellar Wish? Maybe find the Pokemon that I want. I know I've got all of my Evo Incense in there. I've got one Pokécom, but that doesn't really matter. If I hit that Incense, then I've got a chance. Or I could just Professor's Research this hand away, and I just have to hope that I hit both of them. So I'm having a bit of a think here. What is the right way to go about this? I think, to be honest, it's probably better just to Professor's Research. I didn't use the Old Rod just because I knew that if I did, I'd have a less chance of getting there, and luckily was able to get into the Rare Candy and the Obstagoon, which is very, very good. I've even got an Evo Incense here, so I can get myself a Lanoon if I'd like, ready for the second Obstagoon that's in my hand. So this is an incredibly good position to be in. I got the energy as well. I'm feeling strong. I've got that Obstagoon. I'm going to place that 30 damage. I put it down on the Zacian, and in hindsight, that's a misplay. I obviously underestimated the power of having one stage 1, so in future I would probably target down that Meowth a little bit more, but it's okay. The 40 damage on the Zacian now means that it's 2 hits away from a knockout with Obstagoon if it didn't have that frying pan on it. Most importantly, there's now no chance that my opponent is going to be able to do damage this turn unless they pull off a big energy switch play, and here comes that Galarian Berserker here. Just taking a look, it does 90 damage because it does buff itself, so that means that I am going to need to hit it into it a couple of times before it hits me twice. My opponent grabbing Fion here, maybe not being aware of the Stealthy Hood and exactly how that works, and also attaching to the ADP. We could be looking for a GX attack here, which is pretty strong. If they are able to GX, which it looks like they're going to be able to do here, then they will be able to very easily come back into this game if they can stop the lock from Obstagoon. So Rangaroo giving my opponent an extra card off the top. I know that his hand's not going to be super great. I guess now there's only 2 cards left. It could be awkward, I'm not sure. Now I'll put the 30 damage onto that particular Berserker, and we'll just obstruct. And knowing now that I can't get gusted out, the only way my opponent can threaten me is if he does take an energy switch and energy onto this Berserker. So we'll see. Energy switch going onto the ADP here. Could be valuing an Ultimate Ray. Trying to use the Fion there, and it fails. Big smiley face there. Whoops. Didn't realize that that was the case. So he is going to have to just attack into this Obstagoon, not being able to do any damage, but will be able to accelerate energy, which is important. He can put them all on the Berserker to get himself an opportunity to attack. And not only is he attacking for 90 now that the GX attack has happened, he's attacking for a little bit more, 120. So now I'm thinking, okay, I'll just obstruct again. I'll force that Berserker out. As long as he doesn't play a Frying Pan down, I can just knock it out with another Obstagoon. I should be okay. The Primate Wisdom here, putting another card back, and my opponent plays down the Lysander Labs, which is very frustrating. He's able to gust out any of my Pokemon. I opt to give him the Jirachi here, which is quite annoying. And he'll be able to Ultimate Ray and knock that out for 2 prizes. So the Lysander Lab's coming in really, really critical. That card seems like a super good one going into the new format, specifically because it's just a way to give you an out against Obstagoon. Like, it means that a deck like this can easily beat Obstagoon, but the Chaotic Swell off the top is very strong. Means that I'm going to be able to take 3 prizes, which is fantastic. And my opponent isn't going to be able to use that Fion again. They definitely can't use it next turn either, even if they do get another Lysander Labs, because they obviously will have to discard their Stadium. So, my opponent promotes Zacian here, thinking, okay, well, I've got to figure out a way to get a knockout on the benched Obstagoon. If I can do that, then I should be okay. I was taking a look at my opponent's discard there to see how much Gust they do have left. Because obviously if they can knock out the benched Obstagoon using some sort of Gust, then it's going to be a lot easier for them to set up a knockout on the active Obstagoon with Berserker. There's a Dedenne coming down, so I've now got an opportunity, if I played any Gust, to gust up that Dedenne, but unfortunately not playing any. I'm just going to have to hope here that I can get a little bit lucky and stop my opponent from doing what it is that they need to do. Opponent playing Marnie now, shuffling away that big hand after the knockout of the ADP. It's a bit annoying, but you know, in hindsight, I probably could have played down a Zigzagoon, but I don't need to. All I'm doing is giving my opponent an opportunity to win the game if I do that. But that Frying Pan is very frustrating. And what it's going to be able to do here is it's going to be able to set up this Berserker so that it can attack into this Obstagoon twice, and I won't be able to knock it out. So what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to essentially have to just Cynthia into an energy and hope for the best. I mean, realistically, I could just hold on to this Rosa, and it's probably, in hindsight, a better play because I know that this Obstagoon's getting knocked out this turn. If I can knock out this Berserker, it's probably going to be fine, but I think from memory I choose to play the Cynthia. Again, probably should have held this hand. One of the good things about recording your games and watching them back is that you see the little things that you do wrong. So even if you're not planning on doing any YouTube content or anything like that, I would definitely recommend it, because in this situation here, I'm like, well, I may as well just keep this hand. Why would I do anything? I've got the Rosa, but I know for a fact that I'm about to play a Cynthia, and it's not going to work out well. So we'll obstruct after playing that Cynthia and hope for the best. As long as I get an energy, I should be fine. I'll knock out the Berserker and then nothing will be able to touch me. But again, I could have just guaranteed it with a Rosa. And I'm going to get punished pretty hard here. I don't have an energy in hand, so we'll quick ball and hopefully can find my way into an energy off of the top. Maybe even a discard supporter like Magnolia would be great as well. That should be fine. I'll obstruct here. It's not going to do enough damage, which is unfortunate. But you know, what can you do? It's one of those things you look back on and understand how you could have played better. Obstruct does 60 damage because of the Frying Pan, which means that my opponent is left on 90 HP. I'm not going to be able to get that with 2 Zigzagoons, so there's no point in doing that. So we're just going to go from here. My opponent has the Fion down. All I need is an extra energy. My opponent reset stamps me, so I've got one more chance. If I can find myself an energy here, I should be good to go, but I don't get one. The Metal Claw will knock me out. There you go. The Rosa in the end probably didn't get punished for that. Managed to thin some more cards out of my deck, but ultimately still probably should have held on, and I whiffed the energy. So you can see just how easily this game could have turned. Unfortunately, I just have to pass. I've got one more turn maybe if my opponent doesn't retreat, but he's intelligent. Whew, that was close indeed. That was a good game. Definitely a good example of how this particular matchup goes. So there you have it, a couple of good games with Obstagoon. If you're thinking of playing this deck as a rogue option, I would definitely recommend it. It is one of those decks that if you set up well enough, you can just automatically win some games like we saw against Baby Blacephalon. Unfortunately, it is just that little bit too inconsistent. Missed energy here or there, or a misplay here or there can cost you, and really good players will be able to exploit it. There are obvious weaknesses like we saw in that Lysander Labs, and obviously anything that plays stage 1s, the deck just automatically loses to, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's probably not your play for OCIC if you are going, but it is definitely worth having a bit of fun with on the ladder. If you get an opportunity to play it, I would definitely recommend it. Anyway, thank you very much for coming along and checking this video out. If you enjoy the content, then consider subscribing. There's a button just here. Over here there are some videos that you might like to watch, and there is also a playlist for more Sword and Shield content that we're doing at the moment. Unbelievable. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at @thesableeyes_YT, and thank you very much for coming along. We'll see you all next time for more from the Sable Eyes. Bye.